the book of Ruth, session number 7, and we continue in chapter 2. The last time we read that Ruth fell on her face in verse 10, and she bowed herself to the ground, and she said unto Boaz, Why have I found grace in your eyes, that you should take knowledge of me, seeing that I am a stranger? And here we see how this is our conversation with Yeshua as well. Yeshua is a Jew. He's from the tribe of Judah. He's the Jewish Messiah, the Jewish leader, the king from the throne of David, prophesied to be the Yeshua, the savior of the world. Why will he take knowledge of us, seeing that we are strangers? But then we read in Isaiah 56 verse 3 that the stranger, the son of strangers, should not say, why do God take notice of us? If they keep his Sabbath days, if they make his people their people, like Ruth did, if they make him their God, the God of Israel, if we choose, like Ruth, to make the God of Israel our God, and we keep his Sabbath days, and we come into his covenant, and we obey his voice, and we love him with all our heart, we are no longer called strangers. And the strangers should not say, I'm just a dry tree. No, the stranger is grafted back into the living olive tree of Isaiah 11 and Romans 11. And then the reward that Boaz gave to Ruth is the same reward that we can then expect from Yeshua. And there was 2 rewards. Let's look at the first one, because in our journey from Egypt back to the promised land, and our journey from the outskirts of the camp all the way into the holy place of the tabernacle, that journey has different rewards and different responsibilities, like we discussed during the Shavuot Bible studies. So let's look at the 2 kind of rewards that Boaz gave to Ruth. The first one is in verse 8. He says to her, Do not go anywhere else, but stay here in my field. You will be safe. This is your place now. You don't have to go and look for food anywhere else. In verse 9, Let not your eyes be on the field when they reap to go after them, because I've charged them that they should not bother you. They will not touch you. And also, when you get thirsty, you can come and drink of the water that I provide to my servants. So he gives her a safe haven. He gives her water for her thirst. This all he does while she is still working in the field. She is still just a gleaner, a beggar. But he's already rewarding her more than any other beggar is rewarded. Another reward is in verse 15. So Boaz commanded the young men, and he said, Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not chase her away. So instead of just walking behind the harvesters and picking up some seeds that falls off, she's also allowed to take a whole sheaf, a whole plant that's still full of seeds. And he said to his young men, don't stop her. She can come anytime and take as many sheaves as what you want. Also, that's their labor. They are harvesting the sheaves, and then only will the seed and the corn and the wheat be threshed from the sheaves. But he says to her, no, it's fine. You can even go into the main harvest. You don't only have to eat the breadcrumbs. You know the correlation now with the Canaanite woman. He also gives her even more reward for her physical hard labor. Verse 16, let some of the handfuls that you pick, he's speaking to his servants, let them fall on purpose for her, so that she can just pick them up. So instead of having to walk around and look for those little seeds that's falling and picking them up laboriously, he's also telling his servants to let whole handfuls fall just by accident. Oops, here's a handful. Oops, there's a handful. So he provides handfuls of breadcrumbs. So she doesn't have to go look for breadcrumb by breadcrumb, but every now and again she gets a whole handful, one heap on the ground, and she can just pick them up so much easier. And it is the work that she's willing to do. She's more than happy to do this work all day long in the sun. But as she's willing to do that work, she gets all these beautiful little rewards. Chapter 3, verse 15. He said, bring the veil that you have upon you and hold it. You know, your vessel, your container. And when she held it, he measured 6 measures of barley, and he gave it to her. So even after she was gleaning, he still fills her basket with 6 measures full. That is much more than she could ever have gleaned, you know, by looking for breadcrumb by breadcrumb. So that's all the first reward. That is the reward that we can expect here on earth when we are doing our labor to His honor and His glory. When we work our daily work, we keep the Sabbath days, but we also do the work in the harvest field, you know, His kingdom, His people, where we sow the seed and He brings the rain and the sun and He lets it grow. But we are willing to put the effort in to sow the seed. These are the kinds of rewards we get physically, emotionally, spiritually, prophetically. These are the rewards that we can expect from Messiah, the Kingsman Redeemer. But let's go further, because not only does He reward this stranger who now became part of God's people, but there's another reward, you know, for all the strangers, all of God's people that has been scattered into all the pagan countries, that comes back into covenant with the God of Israel. There's a second reward waiting. And that we find in chapter 4, verse 10 and verse 13. So verse 10, moreover, Ruth the Moabite woman, the wife of Mahlon, I have purchased to be my wife. That is why he's called the Kingsman Redeemer, Yeshua, because he is our Redeemer. What is a Redeemer? It's somebody who purchases your freedom. What do you do when you get a Dis-Chem voucher? Or let's not support Dis-Chem because of their racial things anymore. What do you do if you get a Checkers voucher? You take your voucher in, you go and put stuff in your trolley, and when you get to the till, you are redeeming your voucher. You are giving your voucher in. You're not physically paying for the stuff you are buying, and then they take the voucher in the place of money. Yeshua is our Redeemer in our place. He gave His life, and therefore with His blood, He can purchase us out of being strangers, being whore of Babylon, being sinners, being lost, and being not part of His kingdom. He redeems us out of the kingdom of darkness, Paul says in the New Testament, and He transfers us, God transfers us to the kingdom of His beloved Son through His blood. We are redeemed, we are purchased. Just like Boaz purchased Ruth to be his wife, to raise up a name for the inheritance of her dead husband. And also verse 13. So Boaz took Ruth and she was his wife. That's a massive second reward. From servant being rewarded during your hard labor, you now become the wife of the one who rewarded you when you were still a servant. Look at this amazing prophecy out of the Old Testament of Yeshua's marriage. But then all the previous stuff had to have happened before this marriage can take place. So Boaz took Ruth and she became his wife. And when he went into her, Yahuwah gave her conception and she got pregnant with a child. She bore a son. And it's not only just any son. It is the grandfather of King David, who is a significant picture of Messiah. So here are the two rewards that the servants can expect from Messiah. And the servant that does the work like Ruth did, with, really willing to work this hard to look after her and Naomi, the kind of reward she gets is much more than she could ever have imagined. No nowhere ever in Ruth's life did she imagine that she will be the wife of a noble, healthy, wealthy landlord back in the land of the people of the God of heaven and earth. And here, she, a beggar, a stranger, a woman from Moab, that's not even supposed to come anywhere close to the temple. She not only comes into the family of God, but she's allowed into the royal. It's a closer circle than just family. It is the inner circle of the royal bloodline. Because Nehemiah 13 verse 1 and 2 clearly says that a Moabite is not allowed anywhere in the temple. Nehemiah 13 verse 1 and 2. On that day they read in the book of Moses in the audience of the people, and therein, in the Torah, they found written that the Ammonite and the Moabite should not come into the congregation, into the church, into the ecclesia, into the family, into the kingdom of Yahuwah forever. Because why? They met not the children of Israel on their journey out of Egypt with bread and water, but they hired Balaam. You know, remember Biliam and Balaam, who cursed them, who tried to curse them anyway, but Yahuwah changed that into blessings. But Biliam was the false prophet that worked for profit, because Balak the king wanted to destroy Israel. So because Moab did this to Israel, no Moabite was ever allowed to come anywhere close to the temple. This is written in the book of Nehemiah. This is hundreds of years after Ruth. Hello? Did Nehemiah not know about Ruth? Did Moses not know about Ruth? No, of course. The whole Torah is about the stranger who leaves Egypt and become part of Israel. But the moment you become part of Israel, you are called Israel. You are no longer called Egyptian. The moment that Ruth came into God's covenant, she became God's people, and she was no longer seen as a Moabite. So a Moabite is not allowed. An uncircumcised person, the New Testament says, and all the prophets says that in the New Jerusalem, an uncircumcised man will not be allowed. But the moment you go through circumcision, the moment you come into covenant, you are no longer called a stranger. That's why God says, let not the stranger say, I'm a dry tree. Because once you keep the Sabbaths, you know, the holy cycle of God, it actually means you come into his whole Torah. When you start keeping the Sabbath, you are starting to learn all about obeying this God according to all his commandments. So when you do that, your name is changed. That's why the prophets say, let the stranger not say he's a dry tree, because why? He'll be made a pillar in the temple of God. And he will receive a name that is even better than sons and daughters. That's why when Ruth said, you know, I'm just a stranger, Boaz said to her, no, you are no longer a stranger. Because of what you did, and we will look at that now, because of what you did, you are now no longer a stranger. And therefore you receive a name better than sons and daughters. Doesn't Ruth chapter 4 verse 15 say that Ruth is better than even 7 sons? See how all these Bible verses come together to form a picture. And they are not standing alone. We as strangers who return to covenant are no longer a dry tree. We are no longer beggars. Even as we are servants in the field, we receive rewards. We are looking after Naomi. We are not like Moab, who met the children of Israel in the desert and tried to destroy them instead of looking after them with bread and water. Nehemiah just read out of the book of Moses, where God said to Moses, no Moabite will ever be allowed. But obviously God knew about Ruth. God knows the end from the beginning. But Ruth is no longer seen as a Moabite. You and I are no longer seen as ex-sun god worshippers, as pagans, as Moabites. We came out of Babylon. We are no longer seen as Babylonian. We are no longer doing mixed religion. We are now called Israel. Ephraim and Manasseh was bastards, half Egyptian, half Hebrew, and they lived in a sun-god world. And the moment Jacob blessed them, they said, let my name, Israel, now be over Ephraim and Manasseh. You are no longer Ephraim and Manasseh, the two bastard children out of Egypt. That's half mixed with Hebrew and Egyptian blood. You are now called Israel. That is why the house of Israel, with Ephraim and Manasseh and the 10 lost tribes, they are called the house of Israel, not the house of Ephraim. In some places they are called the house of Ephraim. In some places they are called the house of Joseph. But both Joseph came home. Ephraim came home back into covenant, and they were reunited with their brothers, and they are called Israel. Ephraim was the leader of the 10 northern tribes. So the house of Ephraim, the house of Joseph, the name of Jacob is on them. That's why they're called the house of Israel. They are represented by Ruth, by the stranger from a strange country who's willing to leave everything behind and not only, become part of Israel and serve the God of Israel, but even willing to look after Naomi, God's delight, God's people who left the land and came back with strangers, but who never worshipped the sun god. Not talking about the Jews from the synagogue of Satan, remember. So he physically answers her. She fell on her face and she said, why do you take notice of me, seeing that I'm a stranger? And Boaz answered and said unto her, so here is what Yeshua answers and says unto us. When we stand in front of him and we say, we are just strangers. And we mustn't forget, even Abraham was called a stranger. In the Bible, when we keep the feast of, tabernacles, we bring our sacrifices to the temple and we say, we are just the son of a stranger. Our father was a wandering Aramean. But you, the God of Israel, the God of creation, called our father out of the strange land. And now we are no longer strangers. We are called the people of God. So Boaz is answering her. And this is Yeshua's answer for you and me. And this is what you and I are. Which church are you from? We always asked. Which church do you go to? Well, there's no church. All the churches out there are, have got their sun god traditions. We are from the ecclesia, the called out ones. Our father was a stranger and he was called out of Babylon. Ruth was a stranger and she was called. God called her through Naomi back to covenant. We are called by the good shepherd and we obey, we shema his voice. Then we come into the ecclesia, the called out one, the holy assembly of God. There's no church for us. We have, like the book of Acts, we have our church services under trees, next to rivers, in houses, from house to house. We don't have a church. So Boaz says, it has been showed to me everything that you have done unto your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. So first of all, when you care for Naomi, representing the house of Judah, when you care for the house of Judah, you are now part of Israel. You're no longer seen as a stranger. And you don't have to worry or wonder why God is taking notice of you. Why the Kingsman Redeemer is taking notice of you. Why he's giving you first reward. Why you are found in grace in his eyes. It's not a strange thing anymore because it has been told to him. He has seen how you are looking after Naomi. And he continues. He says, how you left your father and your mother. God is seeing everything we are doing, like Nehemiah. Every time he was fighting against the enemy and having a difficult time, he said, God, are you seeing what I'm going through? Every time he did something great, he gathered all the treasures, he built the walls, he put everybody in their place to do certain jobs. He had a lot of work. And every time he did something big, he said, God, please remember, are you seeing what I'm doing? So God is seeing how she left her father and mother, how she left her pagan traditions behind, how she left her comfort, her house, that which she knew, including the religion, the worship, the gods, the culture, the language. She left all that behind. Boaz says, It has been shown to me how you left your father and mother. It has been shown to me how you left the land of your nativity, how you left your roots, which is in pagan culture, how you were willing to leave that behind and leave your father and mother, that which is precious to you, but it's still in pagan culture. You are willing to leave it behind. And now you are looking after your new culture, your new family, your family in the God of Israel. So Boaz said, it has been shown to me how you're looking after your mother-in-law, how you left your father and mother, how you left the land of your nativity, and how you have come unto a people that you did not know before. How much guts, how much courage, and how much faith you had. So he saw all these physical things. But what are the spiritual things behind that? It's just like with Abraham. God called Abraham out of the land of Chaldea, out of Babylon, out of Nimrod's kingdom. And he said, you will go to a new land that I will show you. Abraham didn't know where he was going to. Abraham didn't know he was going to become the father of many nations. He didn't even have a son for over 20 years since God promised him. He didn't see the fulfillment of most of God's promises. He didn't even live in the promised land with all his thousands and thousands and millions of descendants, that is as the sand of the sea and as the stars of heaven. He only saw one descendant. And then, of course, the half-breed Ishmael. But he only saw Isaac. He never saw Isaac's children or Jacob's children. He never knew. He never saw the fulfillment of the promises of God. He also went out of his culture, his language, his pagan traditions, everything he knew, everything that was dear to him. He left all that behind, just like Ruth, and he became the people of God, just like Ruth. My father was a wandering Aramean from the land of Chaldea. Ruth was a stranger, and she doesn't deserve. Boaz, why don't you rather look after the beggars of your own people? But he heard all the things that Ruth did, and he actually fell in love with her. He comes to his field every day, and he sees all these people gleaning every single day. It's nothing strange. It's the Torah commandment. Lots of beggars are gleaning from the fields. He never tried to find out who is that person, who's that person. It only talks about him seeing this new woman and immediately asking his servants, who is she? And then, obviously, he had to go and find out more about her. Oh, she was married to Mahlon. Mahlon died. Naomi's husband died. Everybody died. And then she came back out of her land. She didn't have to do that. Why did she do that? Oh, she's looking after Naomi. What a wonderful woman. What an amazing stranger who's willing to become part of Israel, who even chooses the God of Israel. He continues in verse 12. Yahuwah recompense your work. Yahuwah is the one who's blessing you, who's rewarding you, who is paying you back for your hard work. And a full reward be given to you from our God, the God of Israel. And now this is important. Under whose wings you have come to trust. It's not only because she looked after Naomi, or because she left her traditions behind and her land. Not only because she's working so hard in the field, but all the physical evidence from her life proves her faith in God. You have chosen the God of Israel. You have chosen to trust the God of Israel. Let him recompense you. Let him give you a full reward. Him under whose wings you have come to trust. I don't have to remind you. The wings is the kanaf. And the book of Malachi says, the Son of Righteousness, our Kingsman Redeemer, who's the Son of Righteousness, is rising with healing in his wings, in his kanaf. He wants to gather us like chickens under our wings. The woman with blood flow grabbed his wings of his garment. We come under the wings, under the tent flaps of the tabernacle. And when we do that, like every Egyptian who's done it, like the Hittite who's done it, like the Canaanite, Caleb who has done it, like Ruth who has done it, like Rahab who has done it, like all the strangers in the book of Isaiah that God said, my people will become strangers in a strange land, prophesied out of Deuteronomy 4. But when they remember me and obey my voice, they come back to me, and I will make them one nation again in the hand of my son. So this is the work that God is doing. And this he clearly describes to us out of the book of Ruth. Ruth is not just an ancient historical story about a woman one day that got to marry a guy, and then out of them came King David. It is so much more. It's about the 10 tribes, 10 men that grab onto the kanaf, the wings of a Jew. You know that verse, right? Zechariah 8, verse 22. Yes, many people and strong nations shall come to seek Yahuwah in Jerusalem. Not in London, Cape Town, Durban, but in Jerusalem. Come back to the promised land. Now it is the covenant. But in the future, we will physically go back to the promised land. Many people will come and pray before Yahuwah, the Lord of hosts, in Jerusalem. In those days, 10 men from the 10 lost tribes, 10 men will take hold of out of all the languages on earth, all the languages, all the nations, tribes, languages, tongues, continents, countries. Out of them, my people will come back. They will grab hold of the wings of a Jew. Which Jew? The one from the house of Judah. The one from the loins of King David, the one who is the great-great-great-great-great-grandson of Ruth and Ruth and Boaz. That Jew, we grab hold of his wings. We touch the garments, the seam, like the woman with blood flow. We grab the wings of Yeshua's garments. We grab onto him and we say, we will go with you. We will follow you. You are our Kingsman Redeemer. Put your wing over us. We know that God is with you. We know that Yahuwah is with you. You are Yeshua. You are the Kingsman Redeemer. You are the one who's purchasing us out of every tribe, nation, and tongue. We have been scattered because of disobedience. We grab unto you for repentance and forgiveness of sin, and you can bring us back into covenant. Malachi 4 verse 2. The Son of Righteousness with healing in his wings. Deuteronomy 4, you'll be scattered, but when you remember me, when you grab onto the tzitzit, that is on the corner, you know the tzitzit is, what is vlag, is braided, and it's put on the four corners of the garments of men, and that reminds you of the Torah. So when we remember the Torah, we grab onto the tzitzit, onto the wings of this Jew. Then we come back under the tent flaps, under the wings of the tent, of the tabernacle, and we can go with him because God is with him, and he will take us back to God. Yeshua said, I don't teach you anything that I didn't learn from my Father. Nobody knows the Father but the Son, and those to whom the Son wishes to reveal the Father. We can only see the Father once we come into the tabernacle. We can only come into the tabernacle if we come under the wings of the tabernacle, if we enter the tent flaps of the tabernacle. And that's where the servant becomes a friend becomes a child, and the child becomes the bride. Those are the stages of your journey out of Egypt, all the way through the tabernacle, all the way to the most holy place. Absolutely beautiful. So the answer of Boaz, Ruth said, why are you even taking knowledge of me? I'm a stranger. And he says, no, you have chosen that which is precious to God. You have chosen his people, and you have chosen to trust him. You have come under his wings. Under his wings, you have chosen to come. And this proves that you are trusting him. And this proves that you deserve the reward that's coming to you. So she said, we continue in Ruth chapter 2, let me find favor in your sight, O my Lord, for that you have comforted me and for that you have spoken friendly unto me, your handmaiden, though I be not like unto one of your handmaidens. I'm not like one of your people. I'm not like one of your existing servants. Yet you speak so friendly to me. We are not originally, we haven't kept the covenant. Our fathers, our forefathers, our grandfathers and grandmothers, we have gone astray so far, like sheep lost. And yet he speaks friendly to us. And Boaz said unto her, at mealtime, here's another reward. And the first reward. At mealtime, come you and eat of my bread, and dip your morsel in my vinegar. And she sat beside the reapers. She didn't sit in the sun out there in the field anymore, where she had no lunch anyway. He invited her to come lunchtime, sit with his reapers, and eat with him. So she sat beside the reapers. He reached her parched corn, and she ate, and she was satisfied, and she left. Who served her parched corn? Who gave her food? Not the reapers, not the servants, not the other handmaidens. Boaz himself served her. She took it out of his hand, and she ate. She was satisfied. Maybe for the first time in many weeks, she had a full stomach, and she was satisfied, and then she went home. And when she was risen up to glean, Boaz commanded his young men, and he said, let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not chase her away. And let fall also some of the handfuls purposely for her, and leave them, that she may glean her, and do not chase her away. So she gleaned until in the field until the evening. So a whole day in the sun. And she beat out that which she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. So it was a good day of labor. It was a hard-earned reward. She was supposed to go home with only a few handfuls of barley, and then still beat it out and make bread, and then only she and Naomi could eat. But halfway during her hard work, she received lunch from the Kingsman Redeemer. So she took her ephah of barley, and she went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned, and she brought it forth and gave it to her. She had reserved until she was sufficed. So Ruth shared her hard day's labor with Naomi. She made sure that Naomi were also satisfied, also had enough to eat. And her mother-in-law said to her, where have you gleaned the whole day? Why is she so surprised? Because an ephah of barley is quite a lot. And Naomi has never seen a woman gleaning in the field coming home with so much food. Where did you glean? And where were you the whole day? Blessed is he that took knowledge of you. So obviously Naomi knew that this wasn't natural. You don't by just gleaning bring home so much food. She knew that someone somewhere have taken notice of Ruth. So blessed is he that took notice of you. May the Naomi tribe, the house of Judah, also see how the Kingsman Redeemer, the Messiah, is taking notice of us. And may they also start blessing his name. Bless the name of Yahuwah, who's bringing back the strangers and making them part of Israel again. Strangers that are no longer keeping their strange sun god traditions, but are keeping the traditions of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, and Joseph, and David, and Solomon, and all the prophets. May they see the blessings that's coming over returning Israel, Ephraim that's coming home, Joseph that is to be reunited with their brothers. May they see that also, and may they start asking questions. Who are you? Where did you come from? Where did you work the whole day? How did you start keeping the Sabbath days? Why are you a stranger doing the covenant of Moses? May they ask that, and may they realize that the Kingsman Redeemer has taken notice of us, and he is blessing us, and he is rewarding us with faith and with covenant beauty and honor in this world, while we are still gleaning, still working in the field, still struggling to reunite with Judah. May they see what the kinsman redeemer is taking notice of. And she showed her mother-in-law with whom she had been with Boaz. The man's name that I was with the whole day is Boaz. And Naomi said unto her daughter-in-law, Blessed be he of Yahuwah, who has not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead. And Naomi said unto her, so Naomi is blessing Boaz because of his kindness, because of what he is doing. So the first reward is food, and water, and shelter, and shade, and being nice to her, and speaking friendly to her, and giving his servants instruction to give her more of the harvest. So that is the first reward. And Naomi blesses Boaz for his first reward. But just like that, the Jewish people also knows that there is a second reward. Both Naomi and Ruth will benefit from the second reward. And the second reward is, Naomi continues and she says to Ruth, this man is our kinsman. He is our next kinsman. Not king like K-I-N-G, not king of kings, but kin, K-I-N, which means he's of your blood. He's of my blood, says Naomi. He's my kinsman. He's my next of kin. Who's your next of kin? Your closest relationship, your next of kin. If you fill in forms, you fill in your own number and your husband's number or your wife's number, and then they always ask, who's your next of kin? Your children or your sister or your brother or one of your parents. Your next of kin is your closest kin, your closest family member. So after Malon, Chilion, and Elimelech died, Boaz is the next of kin. So this man is near of kin unto us, one of our next kinsmen. So Naomi is recognizing the first reward, but in her mind, she's already now imagining and planning the second reward, the bridal reward, the marriage covenant. And she is now exploring the possibility of Ruth maybe being able to get married to Boaz because he's the next kinsman, he's one of the next kinsmen. There's quite a few of them. But Naomi doesn't want just any kinsman to get married to Ruth. No, she wants this one who took notice of her, who blessed her, who looked after her. She wants Ruth to get married to this kinsman. And Naomi said unto her daughter-in-law, It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his maidens, and that they meet thee not in any other field. Always go back to his field and go with his maidens, his companions. Ruth means a companion, a neighborly woman. That's her name. So Ruth, find other Ruths and then go together to the kinsman redeemer's field. So she kept fast by the maidens of Boaz to glean unto the end of the barley feast and of the wheat harvest, and she dwelt with her mother-in-law. We are in the house of our mother-in-law. A mother always represents the nurturing of the Torah, the mother's milk. God says, I feed you with milk and honey. So he's feeding us with a mother's milk. Ruth lived with Naomi. Naomi was teaching her the Torah. And later on, when there was a child, Naomi was the one that was breastfeeding the child, feeding the child with the milk from the house of Judah, the part of the land of Israel, the part of the nation of Israel that never left the Torah, that came back to the covenant land. Yes, I know, these are not the end day house of Judah reconciliation yet. But they are currently back in the covenant land. They are cultivating the land. They've got amazing technology. And the land that used to be a desert almost looks like the Garden of Eden again. The land is slowly but surely being restored. Yes, I know the Third World War and the temple with the Antichrist in, all those things are still coming. But it doesn't change the fact that Jerusalem and Israel is the covenant land, and that the house of Judah are the covenant people, and we have to be grafted back into the olive tree, so that we can share in the fatness of the olive tree and in the roots of this olive tree. No other olive tree, no other field. Go back to his field with his people. This is the end of chapter 2. Tomorrow we'll start with chapter 3. And this is, again, here we're going to learn so much about the marriage supper of the Lamb, about the bridegroom Messiah, the Kingsman Redeemer.